Hello, public power aficionados. I'm Ben Serrurier, and I'm honored to join Public Power Underground today. I've worked on Western power issues for about a decade, enjoying different perspectives as a renewable energy project developer, a PPA broker, a climate policy advocate, and Twitter gadfly. I still own the email address for PudPAC, my erstwhile foray into PUD elections and public power governance from like 2012, maybe? So I was listening to last week's episode, and I was daunted by filling Bill Drummond's shoes as guest host. My first job in energy was reimagining the purpose and leadership of public power in the Pacific Northwest following Steve Wright's retirement from BPA. We call this effort Renew BPA, and it feels right to revisit this effort in light of where we are today and to perhaps provide something of a call to action in response to Bill's excellent pitch on how to bring the next generation into public power. So go back and read the speeches FDR made at the advent of public power about the national cause of electrification. In 1937, FDR gave an address at the Bonneville Dam where he boasted that, and I quote, "Instead of piling up armaments for purposes of war, we in America are wiser in using our wealth on projects like this, the Bonneville Dam, which will give us more wealth, better living, and greater happiness for our children." In no place has public power created more wealth, better living, and greater happiness than in the Pacific Northwest. And it's time that we harness that energy for a similar purpose today. As we witness what is happening in Ukraine and with market volatility around the world, electrification is again an answer, and public power is again the way to do it. We replaced kerosene. Why not gasoline? Why not methane? The benefits of rural communities in particular would be immense, like the prosperity borne out over the last 85 years on a foundation of clean energy. Instead of sending $1 to Putin or pick a dictator of your choice, just so you can drive 10 miles to your ski hill or your fishing hole, what about sending a quarter to your local PUD instead? For local, clean electricity. Then you can go and spend the rest of your dollar doing whatever. Local brewery would probably be my choice. Public power has all the tools it needs to lead in this effort. So let's renew that vision and see the cause of public power lead again for the century to come. Renew BPA, and let's start the show.
We started in hard times to bring us all into the laughter.
Welcome to Public Power Underground, Public Power's premier infotainment program that covers public power and public power adjacent news from a power department's perspective. I am new friend of the Underground and a recovering solar developer, Twitter gadfly, and a manager with the carbon-free electricity practice at the Rocky Mountain Institute, mostly focused on accelerating the clean transition to wholesale power markets. And I am this week's celebrity guest host, Ben Serrurier.
I'm Jason Fordney, editor of California Energy Markets, a one-time attendee of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and this week's podcast ambassador from News Data.
This is Arin Guillory, the star of Arin Reports, co-star of Public Power Underground, and controller at Clatskanie People's Utility District.
And I'm the creative director of Public Power Underground, manager of Clatskanie PUD's power department, and producer for today's recording, Paul Dockery. Welcome, Ben. Wonderful monologue. Great stuff.
Inspiring.
I'm happy to be here. This is the only crowd I can wear my FERC shirt and really feel like I'm fitting in.
And feel like your dorkiness is appreciated, right?
Yes, I'm also non-jurisdictional personally, so I'm sure the public power folks appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, we do. I really enjoyed we want to get you to buy some Public Power Underground merch. What if I had a shirt that said "More wealth, better living, and greater happiness"? Then could we get your money to get some merch?
Yeah, for that cause. That is how I would like to spend my wealth, is on public power merch.
Yes, that's exactly what I like to hear. Hello, Jason.
Awesome.
I see you. I noticed you have attended the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I'm paying attention.
Yeah, I guess you're reading my Twitter. Yep. I went in 2007. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Did you wear a tux?
No.
Jason Fordney in a tux?
Was
Could
I
not imagine it.
I had it's funny because I had taken a little hiatus from energy reporting, and I had my motorcycle magazine that had just ended, and I came back to DC, so I didn't have the money for a tux, put it that way. I'd been waiting tables. As I said in my tweet, it was a little unusual to go from waiting tables to hanging out with everyone at the correspondence dinner. Yeah,
I can
George
definitely
W.
imagine.
Bush.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun. We had Stephen Colbert had roasted Bush so hard the previous year that they brought in Rich Little, and he was pretty tame, but he was probably my favorite when I was a kid. So that was kind of cool. Yeah.
That's fun. And Guillory, this is a long hiatus. We have not had Arin Guillory for on the show in months, it seems. How long has it been, Guillory?
It's been a couple months.
The original
Sure.
star of Arin Reports, the original.
I missed you.
Yeah, nice to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be missed. Yeah, it's been a lot going on. I mean, but when you can bring in Karen Heim and some other stars in here, I will completely bow out with no worry or heartache.
I mean, they aren't replacements. They're just,
No, this is much more glamorous than the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
much
It
more
is.
glamorous.
Power Underground.
I'll just say that event's a little bit overrated, but
A little bit.
not this, the correspondence dinner. Yeah.
Wow. Good clarification there, Jason.
Appreciate that.
For those listening on the podcast, Arin is the only one currently wearing Public Power Underground merch, and she understood the assignment. Well done, Arin.
Thank you. This was my one time in months to shine, so I took it seriously.
Well done. Okay, are we ready to get into it, everybody?
Yeah.
Ready
Sure.
for it.
Yep.
This is season 4, episode 14 already. Geez. On today's recording, we'll discuss all sorts of energy news and the most exciting acronyms, including BPA in the EIM, CREPC WIRAB, all things transmission, NuScale IPO, another Wall Street Journal article, that's the WSJ article, obviously, Arin Reports, and a bunch of witty banter in between. But before we get started, Jason is going to read a quick word from our presenting sponsor.
Presenting sponsor of Public Power Underground is the Energy Authority. The Energy Authority is a nonprofit energy portfolio management company owned by public power entities like us. TEA's mission is to help clients maximize the value of their assets and meet their power supply goals. TEA does this by providing expertise in energy trading, advanced analytics, renewable solutions, and a whole lot more. Over 60 public power utilities have partnered with TEA to tackle their energy future. So if you're looking for an energy authority to partner with in navigating the uncertain future of our industry, visit teainc.org to learn more. That's teainc.org, the Energy Authority. They're as underground as it gets.
Thanks, Jason. We're starting this week, like most weeks, checking in on power market indicators in the Northwest with our first segment, Arin Reports. Take it away, Arin.
Let's do it. Good to be back. This is Arin Reports with Arin Reporting, where we get up to speed on Northwest market indicators for May 9th, 2022. I'm Arin Guillory, and I've got your market update for the week. Spot market power in the Northwest for delivery today is at $68.38, with natural gas at $7.04 per MMBTU, translating to a spark spread of 1914 and a heat rate of 9,700. Spot power in Southern California is at $44.17, and in Northern California, $63.78. May balance of month at Mid-C is $71.95. June power at Mid-C is down $4.05 from a week ago to $51.45. And Sumas gas is at $8.20, translating to a heat rate of 6,300 BTU per kilowatt hour. June power at Palo Verde is down $4.50 from a week ago to $118.25 per megawatt hour. August power at Mid-C is trading down $10 per megawatt hour from a week ago at $195.05, with Sumas gas at $9.13, translating to a heat rate of 21,400 BTU per kilowatt hour. At Palo Verde, August power is at $256.75 per megawatt hour, down $4.45 from a week ago. In fish counts, 1,942 adult spring Chinook were counted at Bonneville yesterday, May 8th, bringing the year-to-date today to 86,534. October through September flows at the Dalles for water year 2022 are currently forecasted to be 96% of normal, and April to September is at 97%. Outflow at the Dalles peaked over this morning at 235.9 KCFS. Day-ending elevation at Grand Coulee yesterday was 1,253, and peak outflow this past week was 146.4 KCFS on May 4th. Checking in on Entergy's aggregated basin data on snow in the region, the aggregation of all snow in the Columbia River Basin that'll flow through Bonneville Dam is estimated to be 122.38% of normal. Spending a beat at Bonneville's Balancing Authority. Peak load this past week was about 6,707 on May 3rd at 7:15 a.m. During load's peak, hydro generation was at 6,820, wind gen was 2,448, conventional units were at 179, and nuclear was 1,147, all units in megawatts. ENSO for the February, March, April period sits at negative 1.0. Oceanic Nino index, the multivariate ENSO index for February, March is negative 1.3. And the SST consolidated Nino forecast indicates that La Nina conditions are likely to continue through summer 2022. This week in NOAA climate forecast, the 6 to 10 day outlook has temp above normal and precipitation below normal for the region. The 30-day outlook issued May 6th shows a leaning for below normal temperatures and below normal precipitation for part of Oregon and Idaho. 90-day seasonal outlooks have not changed since the last update on April 21st and show above average temperature and below normal precipitation for the region. Special thanks to Entergy for letting us use their dashboards, and big thanks to Luigi for compiling this week's report. And that's all we've got for this update.
Outstanding job by Luigi, as always. Just a great job by Luigi.
It's great reporting. Markets, there's a lot going on this last week. It feels like it's been eventful.
It has been a very eventful
You
week.
hear that like rundown. There's so many things that stand out, and there's like some stuff that don't even make the report that are notable. California CAISO hitting 100%, renewables generation to meet load, but they have to keep something spinning, right? So a lot of that was exported. And at the same time, you've got gas at over $7 million BTU. I mean, it remains spicy.
Yeah, looking at the spots posted on EIA's website, and Northern California is at $9.59 per MMBTU shown today, which is knocking on $10, knocking on the door. I don't know.
Ouch.
That translates to electric prices. Even if you got a lot of renewables on the grid, that does translate.
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt.
The marginal, and also the hydro number. I mean, the amount of snow that's going to be flowing through the Bonneville system, 122%. Those numbers don't make sense to me as someone who follows the Central Sierra reports, as Jason does. It's like, share some of the love down here, guys.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous. All that water y'all have up there.
Yeah, a lot of it comes, the Canadian Rockies, that's in the Columbia River Basin. You got to love that. You get a lot of snow just from up there, up north.
I figure it'll be coming down south later this summer in the form of electrons.
Yeah,
another noteworthy thing as we're passing through all of the graphics is inflows are up at Bonneville and at Grand Coulee. That's the green line, and it's going up, up, up. We are seeing a lot of side flows entering the hydro system, which has been, it'll be good for refilling of dams, which is what those side flows are currently contributing to. But power prices this week have been noteworthy.
Yeah, for early May. Yeah. Shoulder season.
Yeah.
Should be a wild summer.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. That was a question. So thank you, Arin. Next up is our weekly walkthrough public power and public power adjacent news in a segment we like to call Public Power Desktop. Paul, give us the typewriter. And Jason, take it away.
Well, speaking of BPA began operating in the Western Energy Imbalance Market on Tuesday, May 3rd Tucson Electric Power also began trading in the EIM on May 3rd, following the entry of Avista Utilities and Tacoma Public Utilities in April. In a prepared statement, BPA Administrator John Hairston said, quote, "Joining the Western EIM is a monumental and meaningful step in the modernization of our operations that unlocks a range of benefits for Bonneville and our customers," unquote. BPA's path to the EIM formally began in the winter of 2018. During the public process leading up to joining, BPA commissioned a third-party analysis of their participation by E3, or Energy and Environmental Economics. E3's analysis forecast a 20 million to 34 million annual net dispatch benefit against ongoing annual expenses of 6.9 million. That benefit level would allow for quick recovery of an estimated 30 million to 35 million in startup costs. The EIM now has 19 participants, serving 77% of the demand for electricity in the Western US. By 2023, it expects to have 22 participants, serving nearly 80% of that demand. Coverage and clearing up was by Steve Ernst. Link to the article and press releases will be in the show notes. So Ben, we're interested in your thoughts on BPA coming into the EIM.
It's awesome. It's unambiguously awesome. I was referencing this Renew BPA effort that I worked on back in like whatever that was, 2012, 2013 or something. And one of the topics that we were thinking of, talking about was, boy, we got to get BPA talking about markets. We got to get better integration. I believe at that time, and I could be mistaken, so direct angry tweets at me, not at the rest of the show here, but I don't even think BPA was scheduling on inter-hour basis in 2012, 2013. Or like they had massive upgrades that they needed to their own system in order to get to the point where joining the EIM would look attractive. And they've made those investments. They've come a long way, I think, from the way the early 20s or to early 2000s view of markets and the overhang of the California energy crisis, et cetera. And it's really wonderful to see that sort of leadership joining a bunch of other public power players in the EIM. You have to expect this will increase benefits pretty materially. The EIM has really been clicking for a number of years now. I think, benefits are in the billions collectively, and it'll be really cool to see what Bonneville does from that sort of foundational platform of integration. Yeah, it was cool to be at CREPC, which we'll talk about in a moment, but like to be amongst the whole sort of Western energy community when this happened. It was
were you still drinking at midnight, and was there a round of cheers when Bonneville went live? Anyway, did you get a tweet? Did you tweet?
I actually didn't notice. Turn the lights on and off a lot just to make sure the imbalance was working.
Yeah, we gotta get some volatility going. Yeah, get the benefits to the market. They did invest a huge amount of capital and resources into making sure their systems were upgraded and they could participate. And a lot of the value that had been communicated is developing their muscles so that they better understood and had some experience in engaging in a market, so they knew better what to expect the next time around.
Yeah, totally. I was reading at referenced from this show, the public generating pools report from last year tracking market development history going back into the 90s and the Indigo effort, etc. Great reporting. Yeah, big plug. Yeah, huge. Well done. And it was one of the interesting things for me coming out of that was looking at the questions that BPA had to answer to even consider, when they were thinking about their own Northwest SCED operations, or, there's a couple of different exploratory groups looking at different options for the Northwest, and I am being part of that. And there's a bunch of, the legal situation around BPA and public utilities and the Columbia River system in the Northwest is direct constrained by a whole bunch of interesting pieces of legislation, and getting some of the legal answers on how they could participate and what that participation looks like really set the stage for joining the EIM. And now when we're in conversations about day ahead market, et cetera, it's like, as you say, flexing your muscles, they're in a much better position to even start to talk about those issues.
Yeah, you had to actually, I'm sure they're sore from the, lift of getting all of that documented down on a rod and figuring out how you could actually operate under the organizing statutes within a market. It's a big lift, and it's a big milestone for the Northwest. Guillory, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but we may have to talk about the accounting implications for Cloud-Scan IPUD and maybe some different accounts. It'll be fine, Arin. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I lost you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks.
It's always interesting to hear from you guys on the operational side. I don't have so much view into that. So yeah, great commentary, Ben. Again, if you ever want to be an energy reporter, look me up.
The glamorous roles at News Data. Maybe you could be a podcast host. Look, you want to take over for Public Power Underground? Ben, you're doing great here. You're doing great.
I'm in it for the correspondence dinner, but I find out that they don't include California energy markets on that. So, Paul, are we ready for the next typewriter?
Yeah, absolutely. We
Otherwise,
are.
I'll just keep going on EIM. Arin's got our next story. Typewriter.
Jason and Ben both attended last week's CREPC WIRAB conference in San Diego. The acronym stands for Committee on Regional Electric Power Cooperation - Western Interconnection Regional Advisory Body Conference. Jason wrote articles for News Data that appeared in both Clearing Up and California Energy Markets, and Ben live tweeted. Links to both types of content will be linked in the show notes so you can consume coverage of the conferences in whichever format you prefer, or both. We'll hand it off to them to provide some commentary and notes, starting with Ben since he's the celebrity guest host.
Thanks, Arin. I think it needs to be said, I got to get a plug here for CREPC WIRAB, which sounds like something you'd hear in a medical office, like, talk to your doctor if CREPC WIRAB is right for you. But it is the best, for my money, the best energy conference in the West. And it's not really even a conference. It's like a really substantive meeting. It's all the state energy offices, all the state regulators. They meet in a windowless room in San Diego, which is just exactly where you want to be. And the agenda goes from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and there's like 2 breaks and they're short. It's free. You don't need to pay anything to register. And they even give you a discounted hotel block. And it just covers a whole slew of really interesting topics that are happening in the West. The focus of this particular meeting happens twice a year. This was the spring meeting, and most of the focus was on market design and transmission planning and development, which sort of are the background of every type of conversation at CREPC WIRAB, but was particularly meaningful, I think, in this iteration because of the FERC rule NOBR that had just come out, the developments of day-ahead and Western Resource Adequacy Program offerings in the West, things that have been discussed on this podcast in previous episodes very well. And generally had, like, in my view, a lot of excitement around the tangible progress and trust that has been built amongst a myriad of stakeholders that truly this time is different. Every time people talk about market growth or integration, transmission development, any sort of new development like that in the West, I think there's a begging question a little bit, which is like, well, we've tried this since 1995, no dice, why now? And I think there seems to be growing consensus, not in every area, but growing consensus that this can be done with iterative baby steps and that this time is in fact different. Jason, is this time different?
Yeah, I think so. I've noticed the same thing. A lot more focus on collaboration regionally, not just at this event, but in general. Since Elliot Mainzer came to CAISO, he's really focused on that, and I think it's paying off. He was, of course, with BPA before that, so he's a trusted name in the West, and maybe get over a few of the humps that we've had with, trusting California taking a greater role regionally in markets. And yeah, judging from the questions and the conversations, I do see sort of a newer spirit of cooperation, a lot of renewable standards coming into these different states where they need off ramps for this energy. And, hopefully we'll see more of that as we go forward.
So I'm a little different take here. It doesn't seem like it's different because of trust in California. And I actually I'd love to hear you guys' take from the meeting, because for me, it seems almost like what's different this time is maybe the problem's bigger and it's closer, and the Southwest is talking to the Northwest. Is that new? Is that different? Is that one of the reasons it's different this time?
I could see that playing a role, just the resource tightness. Ben might offer a little more, detailed commentary on that. But yeah, I would assume so. You have the Northwest Hydro, the Southwest Arizona rely on. You have the new wheel through rules in CAISO that are giving some heartburn. But yeah, I think you're accurate with that. Do you have any thoughts, Ben?
I wouldn't say necessarily that it's distrusting in California, or that.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have framed it that way. No. That was off the hip a little bit there, but there's still skepticism of California.
Sure. No, I think there's a lot of quite legitimate skepticism of California, particularly from the standpoint of changing governance structures to allow for an RTO. But I think what made this particular conversation the other week a little bit different than previous CREPCs is the RTO was itself sort of a long-range goal, aspirational. I think there was one panel that really talked about it, but most of the focus was on much more tangible, achievable discussions. And so when we have success of the EIM, and as we were just talking about, that answers some of the questions, say that BPA needs to have, et cetera, and people start to see the tangible benefits of that sort of wide footprint, redispatch, then there makes the space for a conversation about the enhanced day ahead market, which obviously isn't live yet, but for a day ahead option on that similar type platform. You also have SPP offering Markets Plus. So there's multiple different conversations in different parts of the region going on about this. It's not as big a lift as saying, okay, we're, tomorrow's the RTO go date and we have a long way to get, and there's a lot of different, distance between here and there. So it's that iterative process amongst parties that are voluntarily entering into that conversation and have worked together and see benefits from sharing with each other tangibly, that is materially different than before.
Yeah, some of the flexing of the muscles, like we talked about earlier, we've demonstrated some competency and capability to do similar things. I actually think maybe I'll give credit to the Resource Adequacy Program and that coordination on Western utilities. And I would posit that part of the, at least hopefulness that I hear amongst people, unnamed sources, Dan Catchpole teaches me really well how to do this, unnamed sources that I may have talked to, I don't know. This isn't sourced anyway. That part of it is also maybe that the SPP's Market Plus is also different than California. That maybe there's an option other than an entity that we have some maybe like skepticism around still.
Yeah, sure. And that's not, and I mean, I'd add to that a third, option to reveal itself, right? Like there's a lot of member-driven organizations in the West, and each one of them is following the direction and support of its membership. And I think in the spirit of public power, that's a delightful position to be in, where all those parties have to reach some sort of consensus in order to move forward. And so I think that creates a lot of different tables. There's groups and forums where different options could arise that would help bring integration to the West that would be beneficial when we think about the energy transition and climate impact more broadly.
Yeah. And if I asked you to read the tea leaves a little bit, how much of it's different this time do you think is on the incremental and EDAM, and how much of that conversation was on how big a component in that conversation was Markets Plus at CREPC WIRAB? Was there a lot of conversation about Markets Plus or more around EDAM? This is journalism happening live.
I don't recall a lot of conversation about Markets Plus. Do you, Ben? Of course, I wasn't there for
There is less, I would say. I mean, the real action at CREPC WIRAB obviously happening, off of the official program.
Which you were also at, but you can't report on. That's what you're saying?
No. Joking. Other windowless rooms. I don't know. I know people aren't going to show their cards. I think there's been quite a bit of development with the EDAM, and the straw proposal had just come out. So there was a little bit less to say as people digest that. SPP Markets Plus is more baked, but the question I've always had, and again, I'd love this to be answered. This is a savvy audience. Is for folks in the Southwest, does SPP's footprint? Basically, my question is, how does SPP move west? Yes, into the Mountain West Transmission Group. I see, obviously, there's seams there and opportunities there, and there's sort of like that slice into New Mexico. Like, how do they move from a physical system perspective? Are there as many benefits as they move west? And how does that affect the way that, say, APS will view them, as opposed to a CAISO offering, considering the seam between Arizona and California, not to mention Nevada. So
I'm going to tie one of the things we did not cover, and I don't think we even covered it last week, was Dan Catchpole report on a letter from 15 utilities saying that they wanted to fully evaluate or make sure that Markets Plus was fully developed before it's in clearing up. Go read it. Dan Catchpole did great work on it. But some of there were Southwest utilities included in that letter. And part of me wonders if that they want to see that too, right? They want to know how it works, and that's going to be a large component of the decision going forward. But given the issues the Southwest has with California, it's going to be this is a take. Do you think it's a higher barrier to entry for a Southwest utility than a Northwest utility? 2001 happened in 2001. 2021 happened in 2021. It was 2021, right? That's when they cut the schedules, or was it 2020? Was it 2020?
2020.
Well, it was closer. Point remains. It was closer in time. Is it a greater barrier to entry, a greater skepticism of CAISO in the Southwest now than the Northwest? Ooh, this is a take.
I haven't been to the Southwest recently.
Okay.
You're asking if trust between Arizona and California has declined?
Like relative to the Northwest. We are all familiar, at least are familiar with this, undergoing skepticism, right? This is a cultural issue from the Northwest of California. Now there's the Arizona. This is like a relative. Like this is I don't know. There's a game here that if I'd have thought about it, I probably could. Oh, Elliot Mainzer game. We're interviewing Elliot Mainzer. News. NWPPA's annual meeting. Elliot Mainzer will be there, and we'll be recording an interview in person with Elliot Mainzer. And maybe there's an element here. There's a game coming. I'm wasting a lot of time in this episode talking about a future episode. But Guillory, you think there's a California game in there? You're the native Californian here, so you think I can come up with a California game with you? Some elements here.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. Okay. I might have to come work with you on the California angle of my
I
game.
know the ACC, the Corporation Commission, went pretty crazy about California's new wheel-through proposals. They think it's going to put the choke on that Northwest Hydro, and I not a lot of trust or love there at the moment. Maybe that will change.
Yeah.
Did you all hear about SPP's ending their imbalance market, WEIS?
Yeah, pushing everyone to Markets Plus if they want to hang out.
It's still operating. It just would end if Markets Plus developed. It's still operating now, though, right? The WEIS?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not.
But they said current WEIS participants will have the option to join the RTO or participate in Markets Plus.
Yeah.
Until then, we remain fully committed to continue to provide Western reliability, coordination, and operating the WEIS market. So,
is that a release? Was that a release, or where did you report that, Jason?
That's a statement we got. They seem to be a little cagey on this. I asked two of their spokespeople about it, no response, and then Dan asked them again, and we got this statement. Not much elaboration, but
it's in one of the articles. Is it in an article that we can all link to in the show notes?
Yeah, it's in Abigail's story from Friday entitled "FERC Filings Suggest Strong Transitions for Tri-State." It's in the context of a Tri-State story.
Okay.
One thing that brought a very big focus at CREPC, and we'll get to this, I think, in our next story, is transmission. And a lot of the existing sort of iterative programs that are being pushed or developed, I should say, the RAP, the EDAM, Markets Plus, deal with capacity planning and resource adequacy in the case of the RAP, and then day-ahead system dispatch in the case of the Markets Plus and the EDAM. And does help get you different functions of an RTO, right? So we're thinking about like sort of taking out these slices and finding where benefits can be had in market integration. They don't address transmission in that same way. And I think that, to my mind, when I reflect back on the CREPC conversations, there's a myriad of challenges with transmission. And I don't get, it might be the third, it's sort of like the third leg of the stool here for a more efficient least cost energy transition system would be a better transmission planning and development process, which touches on a whole bunch of stuff, which we will talk about now.
That's a great segue.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, I think it's on you.
Let's do it. On May 4th, otherwise known as Star Wars Day, Arin Peskoe, the director of Harvard Law's Electricity Law Initiative and #energy Twitter celebrity just like Ben, contributed to an article in Utility Dive on FERC's notice of proposed rulemaking. The title of the NOPR is Building the Future Through Regional Transmission Planning and Cost Allocation and Generation Interconnection. And the title of Ari's article is Can FERC Convince Utilities to Build Modern Transmission Systems, ? End quote. Ari's article includes a framing for the challenge of FERC, FERC is facing that ties to his view of why utilities aren't building big transmission projects. He frames FERC's challenge as, quote, for FERC's rules to be successful, they must overcome utility incentives to overlook cost-saving technologies, prioritize local projects over regional investments, and thwart development of projects that might threaten their generation interests. He continues, because FERC's rules allow utilities to continue to monopolize local projects while forcing them to compete for the opportunity to develop large-scale projects, FERC now concludes its rules, quote, did not adequately encourage utilities to, quote, develop and advocate for regional investment, unquote. Ari suggests, too, what he refers to as modest changes to make the rule more effective. First, specify a minimum set of benefits for assessing transmission projects so that planners can't discard projects on a single metric. And second, let state regulators decide whether transmission should be developed competitively. If you're just catching up on the NOPR like me, you can go check out DiPeso's coverage of its release in the April 22nd edition of Clearing Up. And for more of Ari's insights into the NOPR, which is a good entry point, I would say, for those of us transmission planning enthusiasts, that's probably where I am. I'm a market enthusiast and transmission planning enthusiast, not an expert. A link to both of those articles will be in the show notes. You can read some more. We can become enthusiasts together and rely on experts like Ben to tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, I would be. Thanks, Paul. I would be
Welcome.
very wary of claiming any expertise in transmission planning, and because the more and more I learn, the more and more complex and challenging it seems. A lot of, and I think Jason's article on this on CREPC coverage talking about state impacts and the role of states in transmission planning did a very good job here of elucidating the fact that a lot of the FERC rules around transmission are very oriented, to my mind, very oriented towards the RTOs. And this is true of FERC generally, right? They're very focused on the RTOs, and the West is sort of like out there doing their Western thing and will fly out occasionally and, you know, say nice things sometimes and then leave. And like, it just doesn't have as much sway. And so it's interesting to think of the context of this rule, which is really asking for a more integrated planning, multi-benefit consideration. In the context of the really balkanized system that we have in the West. And one of the presentations that came up at CREPC, and one of the nice things actually about CREPC too, is that all the presentations are posted online and we can link to them in the show notes.
If you send me the link, I can do that. I don't know if I can find them without you though.
It's don't worry, I got you.
Thank you.
But Keegan Moyer from Energy Strategies presented a slide that showed what he called the planning landscape of a typical Western transmission provider. And there's a million arrows going everywhere. There's 5 or 6 different places where any conversation takes place, everywhere from actual regional transmission planning, what we would consider broadly to be the transmission planning process, all the way down to the interconnection and transmission service, queues. And like that's an area where we're actually kind of planning out transmission and development too. And the whole thing is a bit of a mess and it's recursive. And when I think about what FERC is trying to do, it sits uneasily on the Western landscape because we don't have a lot of entities that are truly empowered or with a mandate from a broad set of members to actually solve some of the thorny questions of planning which lines, where, who's going to benefit from them, and therefore who's going to pay for them. And without answering those questions, we're kind of left with like the Spider-Man meme of everyone pointing at each other and saying, build more transmission. And everyone's looking around like, yeah, you should do it. You should do it. And I don't know how much that ultimately solves. Yeah, that's what this is every conversation in WEC about transmission. It's truly the multiverse or whatever they call that. Anyway, so I thought Jason did a good job of talking about like the role that states need to speak up, and if they have a voice, states ultimately with an input to FERC are going to have to deal with a lot of this implementation from a regulatory standpoint, and getting smart on what helping FERC help them is going to be quite the task, because it's been sort of neglected over the last couple of years.
Great promo for your article, Jason.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Apparently you're a subscriber or you're getting the free reads. I don't know there, Ben, but
I'm working so hard to get that subscription.
I felt like it was fair to share. He was going to give his free time, so I got it.
We do 3 free reads a month anyhow, so
yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
That's fair.
I'm working on it, Jason. I'm working on it.
Nice.
Mark Orenshall, if you want Ben back as a celebrity guest host, maybe we can comp a subscription. Maybe.
What do you think this discussion of broader benefits would entail? Decarbonization?
Oh, certainly. I mean, there's. I think you can't go to hear the conversation. One of the things that's also pretty striking about hearing all these regulators and utilities talk over the last couple of days, last week, is how ingrained decarbonization is as a public policy objective. And that also is in conflict a little bit with some of the other states, right? Wyoming spoke up to this regard. And also the limited role of a regulator as an economic regulatory body of a PUC, and not necessarily able to consider all of the things that are included in public policy. But California already does a multi-benefit transmission planning process. I don't pretend to know if it's perfect or not, but different projects will have multitudes of benefits, and it seems like a rational thing that people would be doing already, to say like, hey, we should build a line here because they're going to try to build a lot of renewable energy there, and like it would benefit everyone if we had better transmission to this resource rich area, or where this load is growing, or like there's congestion reasons, resiliency reasons, and decarbonization, long-term public planning reasons. So like they're not mutually exclusive, they're additive. It doesn't seem like everyone is doing it if we have to be told to do it.
Apparently, yeah.
That's a false. I mean, who knows? But probably not. That's not true reporting. You need to work on that if you're going to end up a reporter at News Data.
I'm going to stay on the
supposition.
It's called running my mouth.
Okay, you do it really well. I'm not going to lie. You're very skilled at it. I appreciate it. And we are running out of time. Jason, what's your take? And Arin, if you got a take.
I was just saying CAISO does have that public policy planning criteria along with economic and reliability. So yeah, and I'm not sure about other regions so.
Would love it Westwide.
Yeah.
Love to see it.
All right.
Transmission. We're moving on. We're transmitting ourselves. Okay. Arin, you have the next story.
Sounds good. NuScale Power Inc. on May 3rd announced it had completed its merger with Spring Valley Acquisition, a publicly traded special purpose acquisition company. Shares of the combined company operating as NuScale Power Corp started trading on the New York Stock Exchange May 3rd under the ticker symbol SMR. NuScale has been owned by a Texas energy company, Fluor Corp, which paid $30 million for a majority stake in 2011. Fluor has spent $600 million developing NuScale's technology in the intervening years and retains 60% ownership after Tuesday's deal. Fluor will continue to provide NuScale with engineering services, project management, and administrative and supply chain support. NuScale hopes to have its first reactor operating in 2029 and is working with Idaho National Laboratory and the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems. It announced on April 25th that Doosan would start for forging dies for the upper reactor pressure vessel, marking the start of SMR production. Coverage and clearing up by Rick Adair.
Go, Rick.
Go, Rick.
Yeah, any takes here? This is a very Northwest. I mean, it's a very national news story that's Northwest centric on UAMPS and NuScale being located in Oregon. I think it's big news that they're going to start forging the upper reactor pressure vessel. Anything you see here, Jason, you think is interesting, or any additional things you'd want to dive into a little bit more?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see, the evolution of this company. DOE poured a lot of money into it. It doesn't appear to be going away. I think the merged company has a valuation of nearly $2 billion, which will, has access to a lot of capital and start working towards commercialization. I think it's really exciting. I don't know, on a local level, when you start citing these things, what the reaction will be, and that's, part of it. But when you look at nuclear plants, particularly in California, this looks like a great option and awesome technology. And like I said, it's a full throttle effort. I don't see it slowing down. It's great to see.
Is there any, who here has watched We Crashed on what I think it was Apple Plus, right? It was at Apple Plus. Anybody? No, I'm the only one raising my hand.
I feel like I lived through it. I saw it.
You saw it live. Did you watch the Guillory?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, spoiler alert. I mean, it happened in history. Apparently, the S1 due diligence is where this really went south. And so NuScale made it through the S1. The due diligence of their S1, they went public. But how much does that apply if you're using a SPAC? Does anybody here know IPOs and SPACs and the differences and the nuance in S1 filings on the two?
Oh, I only got so much capacity for really nerdy regulatory stuff, and it does not extend that far.
Okay, we're going to have to find. But Guillory, you're a resident accountant. How S1s and SPACs? I don't know. All I know, I learned from We Crashed.
I audited a company that was preparing to go public, and we started working on their preparation for that IPO like 5 years ahead. So if you can save anything when it comes to regulatory, jumping through hoops and everything, I think sounds like a great deal.
Yeah. Well, I what I did learn from We Crashed, and you, Guillory, it seems like are underscoring this. There's a lot of due diligence that goes into issuing your IPO. And does that have can we read any tea leaves into the hopefulness of commercialization of this technology from that? Ben, do you think there's hope in the commercialization of this technology?
I think going public is great, and I hope there's more tools in the tool shed. To Jason's point, there's the actual project development components of building something like this are not to be found in going public, not to be found in an S1.
No, it didn't even give you a tick more confidence in the commercialization of this technology.
It has more money now, which is great, but project finance is different than equity raising. So
for sure.
It's true. Like I feel like sometimes there's this, the question of, okay, what does the recording or some of the client compliance, what's that, the people who are holding those realms, right? What's their perspective on the financial forecast of a company? And if you're looking from a purely like regulatory or compliance perspective, just in certain parts of the business, it may not matter necessarily what those projections are in different ways, because you're more looking at, what were your balances? Can we trust what your recordings were, that the people who are overseeing those balances are they viable? That's an interesting,
Yeah, well, I have some hope of commercialization of this technology. I'm all hands on deck when it comes to carbon-free resources and dispatchability and as an SMR. It's hopeful.
It's good. It's good. I hope we see something out of it.
Okay. They got some great momentum right now, and they've been around a while. Like I said, they got a lot of R&D money from the government. So it'd be hard for me to see NuScale going away.
They have won overseas awards too. There's been news about some projects, project awards for development. And
this is timely though, because Paul, the next story, which I believe is for you, is about problems that NuScale could help solve. Actually,
natural, man, you're a natural at this. Okay, we're doing it. I'm gonna hit the typewriter, and I have the next story. Bam. Sunday, May 8th, the Wall Street Journal published an article by Katherine Blunt covering warnings from power grid operators that electric supply isn't keeping up with demand. The article covers recent reports, statements, and events out of CAISO, MYSO, and ERCOT, anticipating constrained power supply and extreme demand events. Katherine Blunt also wrote the February 18th piece that we covered on Public Power Underground on America's power grid becoming, quote, increasingly unreliable, unquote, with a great graphic that I'm a big fan of. Bloomberg's Mark Chediak covered a media call on Friday with California energy officials stating that California could be short about 1,700 megawatts this summer and that gap may widen to about 1,800 megawatts by 2025. These national news articles come just when the Pacific Northwest Utilities Conference Committee, PNUC, published its most recent Northwest Regional Forecast that shows many Northwest utilities increasing how fast they expect demand to grow over the next 10 years as a result of climate change, electrification, population growth, and new industrial load. The NRF points to the Western Resource Adequacy Program under development by the Western Power Pool as an example of the ways Western utilities are coming together to address regional needs. Dan Catchpole, friend of the Underground, news data ambassador in the week's Jason and Abigail Aren't, covered the NRF in its publication on April 29th edition of Clearing Up, and we'll link to all of these articles in the show notes. Let's kick it to you, Ben. What do you think? What do you think about all of this national news?
So CAISO, MYSO, and ERCOT, right? So this isn't necessarily some isolated situation. The volatility in volatility in markets generally, right? We were talking about the pricing on natural gas, and we've got tightness in hydro in the West, and then we had the colder conditions in ERCOT a couple days ago, and I was just seeing an article in Bloomberg about how natural gas production again sort of tanked a bit and was sort of not to the extent obviously, but there were shadows of Uri. Like we're working through this kind of volatile time when we're not, historical record does not necessarily predict what the future is going to look like, and it's an interesting test for how quickly markets can adapt to those sorts of changing environments. We obviously need more investment. It's not clear to me that there's a clear way to direct that investment, right? If we're going to be tight, who needs to do what differently, and why aren't they doing that? I feel like answering those questions in more specificity would be useful. I don't want to just hand wave away and say that renewable solves everything, or say that it's because we shut down a ton of gas and it's all these gas stuff is sitting idle. That's not, I don't think those takes necessarily get at the specific instances of okay, well, why was this decision made that led to, if a plant shut down, why did it shut down? And then in other cases, again, literally, who are you asking to do something differently? Because someone has to make a decision here.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on this. I posted on Twitter on it a little bit. First of all, I'm disappointed. I really am. 20 years of covering energy, 20 years of sitting in conferences with hundreds of highly paid people tackling these problems, why we couldn't do better nationally on this issue, the importance of the grid to survival of the economy. And that's disappointing. And the other thing I have a problem with is California calling this news conference. They told me, they apologized for not inviting me. I should have been there too. But the blaming of climate change, and I know this is a touchy issue. Ben probably has something to say about this. I know you have a strong environmentalist bent, as I do too. But when I first started seeing the sign of trouble was Steve Berberich going to the CAISO Board of Governors 2019 saying, we're going to be short. And that perked my ears up. And he wasn't talking about climate change. He was talking about the evening ramp and dwindling imports. Then you have the August 2020 blackouts, which happened. and root cause analysis comes out. Once the CEC and the CPUC got their hands on it, they slapped climate change on the front and back of it. I think it's become a weak excuse. There's other reasons for this, so that's a little disappointing. I don't know.
I don't disagree, Jason, in the sense that like climate change doesn't. It is a, you know, in the way the DoD talks about it, you know, is a force maximizer, right? It is a risk maximizer. Like we don't have as much data to go off of. When you go talk to utilities about how they're planning for peak capacity or energy droughts, you know, how are they planning the system a couple of years out? Well, we're using historical weather data and we're trying to use some sort of projections, sometimes not, on what that looks like in the future. We have less predictability on those models. So already we're flying with a little bit less understanding of what the realm of possibility of outcome might look like. That's a challenge from an operational standpoint. Then we get into these actual tight situations and you have a wildfire in a you have coincident risk factors, right? You have a line goes down because of smoke or reduced solar production because of smoke. And these are issues that we face in the West. And low hydro and the volatility from hydro, those are each and of themselves results of increased climate volatility. I don't think it's fair, as you're correct to say, that climate change, you know, it's like we were all good and then climate change happened. It's like, no, climate change was something, especially for California, which is like, it's not like South Carolina, who's like outlined using climate projections in their official forecast. Like, no, like we know this is happening and we were supposedly aggressive on considering it. And where has that gotten us? Ill prepared for some of those impacts. Climate change doesn't really care about how we're planning, right? It's just this broader phenomenon. It's not like it's making a choice to single out California. Absolutely. I think, but you're right. It is like, it does have a factor in each one of these components. It is not in and of itself the driver. Over reliance on hydro, for example, would be a driver when we have a low hydro here.
Yeah, and you know, tight reserve margins, the legislature not wanting new capacity built. And climate change is nothing new. We've known about it for decades. And demand is not the problem. California's record peak demand was in 2006. And there was several hotter days that month than we had in August 2020. I think the peak in 2021 was about 43 gigawatts as compared to 50 gigawatts back in 2006. So we've always had hot weather. We have less demand because of rooftop solar. But how are we going to electrify? How are we going to get all these EVs in? You know, the California Energy Commission is getting ready this week to consider 30 new 3 megawatt diesel backup generators. They're building diesel all over San Francisco for these data centers. Man, it's kind of a mess, you know, and I hate to be negative all the time, but gosh, again, how are we going to electrify when we've got a grid? And the fact that they're warning so far ahead of time here, and you know, they bet the farm on storage for this summer. Moss Landing is out. It's not going to be back till it'll probably be back for summer, but supply chain is really affecting a lot of the storage. It's an odd way to plan an energy system from my perspective.
I have to laugh. I was thinking about that meme of the guy riding the bicycle who sticks a stick in the wheel and then falls off the bicycle. And it's kind of like instead of doing like a reasonable demand response program or something that actually pays me to, you know, turn off my demand or something like that, instead we're just going to stick the stick in the spokes and say, well, why did climate change do this? You know, and does feel a little bit like that. Yeah.
And you know, they held this press briefing and this happened with the blackouts too. New York Times climate blackouts. They're just going to repeat it. And that's a little annoying to me. But again, I don't want to be crotchety here. We'll see.
We can cut this if you don't like it, but I think of you as the Nate Silver of the energy beat. You're a contrarian to your core, and just like Nate Silver is a contrarian. I don't know if you like it or not. We can cut it if you don't like it.
Doesn't bother me.
Okay. I will say, but on like this understanding of climate change, I'm very empathetic to the issues around a changing system. And when you have a changing system, understanding tail events in that system is incredibly difficult. And that is what's happening, right? Our systems are changing. Our power system is changing. Our weather is changing. And we're all like these outages are tail events in a changing system. And understanding where those tail events occur under what circumstances is very difficult when everything's changing. That's where I'm empathetic to the planner's problem.
And there's another check on that too, which is, how do you build a system to encompass those tail events? And societally, do we want to make a choice to spend that amount of money? It would cost quite a bit to, build it that way. And
am I going to plan for the tail events, or am I going to prepare for the tail events? Right? Is this a resiliency in tail events, or is this I'm going to make sure I build enough that even in a tail events, I'm far.
There's a new report out from Grid Lab and Energy Innovation and Talos Energy today that looks at California in 2030 under an 85% decarbonized grid. So it's 85% by 2030, and they stress test it under a bunch of different scenarios around low gas capacity, hydro volatility, really low hydro, long solar and wind droughts, and look at what is the worst possible day, and then how do these different portfolios and different scenarios hold up? And it definitely points to an achievable but challenging situation that we can do it. The modeling shows, obviously modeling is just one approach, but modeling shows that it's achievable, but we do need to be clear-eyed about what kind of capacity we're taking offline and when. Needless to say, the report is not a full-throated endorsement of accelerated gas retirements, but it does look at areas where air pollution can be materially improved with targeted gas retirements without dramatic changes to reliability given these different stress test constraints. And I think that kind of work is going to be increasingly important. And I mean, quite obviously is considering what happened in 2020.
Yeah, a great place to look is the NERC reports, the sober, dry assessment of things. They've always talked about coal plant retirements causing reliability problems. That's an unpopular kind of take on things, but check out those NERC reports, and they've warned of a lot of this stuff for a long time, especially Texas, which was really egregious. They said back in 2011, you got to winterize your system, you're going to have problems. They didn't do anything. So there we go.
Yeah. Yep. We'll run out of time.
Ready to go? We good? I enjoyed that. We're going to have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll close out the episode with a quick rundown of news stories that we didn't get to in our TLDR segment that we're calling Energy West Lite. First, Arin has a promo. Take it away, Arin.
Northwest Public Power Association believes in power. For 82 years, NWPPA has supported public power utilities and other associates in the greater Pacific Northwest by offering education, training, communications, governmental relations, and services like RFP and job postings. In addition to public power, what else is important to NWPPA? Local control, member needs, integrity, and quality products and services. Today, NWPPA proudly serves 155 member utilities and more than 325 utility industry associate members. Learn more or register for a class at nwppa.org. That is nwppa.org. Believe in power.
Thanks, Arin. Next up, we're going to TLDRing our way through the news in this segment we're calling Energy West Lite.
This is Energy West Lite, a segment where we TLDR our way through the news. I'm Paul Dockery.
And I'm Ben Serrurier.
And we're lightening up Energy West.
Nailed it. 2 next generation battery companies, Group 14 Technologies and Sila Nanotechnology. Shout out to Mark Hughes and Sila, friend of the pod. We have announced plans to operate factories in Moses Lake, Washington, aimed at the electric vehicle market. To learn more about the projects, see Rick Adair's article in Clearing Up.
Casey Mahaffey reported in Clearing Up that groups on both sides of the debate on whether to remove 4 lower snake dams have turned up the heat on their public opinion campaigns in the week before Washington Governor Jay Inslee and Senator Patty Murray are expected to release a draft report analyzing if there are reasonable means to replace benefits of the dam.
A cold April helped preserve snowpack in the Columbia Basin, but a lack of precipitation in the northern portion of the basin kept this summer's forecast for water volume at the Dalles Dam below the 30-year average. The April through September water supply forecast at the dam fell to 94% of average, a 3% point drop since last month, according to a May 5 briefing by NOAA's Northwest River Forecast Center and reported by Casey Mahaffey in Clearing Up.
National natural gas values, thanks Ian for that tongue twister, ascended sharply this week with both spot prices and futures nearing or exceeding the $9 per MMBTU mark. According to an article written by Linda Daly Paulson in Clearing Up, with reported supply and production levels nearly level with the previous week's numbers and fairly normal Western weather, it seems that international supply concerns stimulating exports could be the only lever ratcheting up prices. NYMEX May natural gas futures ended at $8.78 per MMBTU immediately following the release of the U.S. Energy Information Administration storage report, according to Enerfax. The Henry Hub spot price was $8.41 per MMBTU May 5th, a week-over-week gain of $1.61.
In news from the Potomac on May 5th, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said the future of the U.S. solar industry is at risk in connection with a trade investigation currently underway at the Commerce Department. Secretary Granholm's statement followed a letter from nearly 24 senators urging the Biden administration to move quickly to resolve the investigation, raising concerns that the Commerce trade probe was causing, quote, massive disruption in the solar industry. In their letter to President Biden, the senators quoted a Wood Mackenzie estimate that solar deployment could fall to 16 gigawatts annually, quote, if this current situation persists and tariffs are ultimately imposed. That is more than half the magnitude of solar capacity in the US installed in 2021, the senator said. They also said that if the probe results in tariffs, the cost of solar power could increase, given that with crystalline solar photovoltaic modules subject to 250% tariffs, a typical 100 megawatt utility scale solar project would face $62.5 million in duty exposure. For more information, see Jim DiPeso's article in California Energy Markets.
Okay. Other brief mentions from the news roundup are that Avangrid Renewables Golden Hills Wind Farm near Wasco in Sherburne County, Oregon, started commercial operations on April 29th. Congratulations, Avangrid.
And just a day before, on April 28th, Duke Energy Sustainable Solutions started construction on the 120 megawatt Jackpot solar project near Twin Falls, Idaho. It is expected to hit COD by year's end.
Next up, Energy Northwest says construction will soon start on 8 new charging locations on U.S. Route 12 through White Pass between Eastern and Western Washington. Lewis County PUD, some friends of the pod there, are collaborating on the project.
Love to see it. Spooky times in Montana. On April 29, Northwestern Energy asked the Montana PSC for emergency authority to take over and operate Sleepy Hollow Oil and Gas before Winifred, Montana, the town served by the small utility, loses natural gas service.
Was that Ian or was that you? I see you.
That was a little extra English. There's some English on it. Yeah.
That's nice. And the last bit from the news roundup, the conservation group Wild Orca confirmed a new baby among the K-pod of southern resident killer whales. We're finishing out on some good news. It's the first in 11 years, closing out the positive energy of Public Power Underground.
K-pod, the official pod, Orca pod of Public Power Underground.
That's the official pod of the Public Power Underground.
That's all for TLDR. Thanks to Public Power Underground's production partners at News Data for letting us use their leads, and thanks to Ian for compiling them this week.
If you like Energy West Lite, you'll probably like News Data's Energy West podcast, which gets published weekly. Jason Fordney is on it. Dan Catchpole, Abigail Sawyer just was on it last week. It's a great podcast that's every week and maybe a little bit more professional. You ready?
I don't know about that.
Now back to close out the episode because that's Energy West Light.
Light.
That's great. Perfect. No notes.
Nice.
We're killing it.
Yeah.
We're killing it on this.
I think so.
Anywhere to dive in?
I don't know if there's anything else to talk about.
Yeah. So you were once a solar developer. These commerce departments going to add $62 million to this 100 megawatt.
It's bad too. There's a ton of uncertainty, and then if they actually result in a finding that there has been that additional tariffs are needed, they ultimately don't need to say what those tariffs are until 2025, really, and then they can enact retroactive tariffs. So it's really causing a huge disruption to anyone trying to build a solar project and needing to import panels because they literally don't know what the price is because they don't know if they're going to get hit with retroactive tariff. It's a mess.
On top of supply chain issues, which are real in the solar industry, on top of everything else.
It's
triple
unforced
whammy.
error.
Triple whammy.
Yeah. Hopefully resolved soon.
Yeah. Anything else there, Arin or Jason, that you wanted to dig in a little bit more or comment on?
Ben might have noticed that Eric Blank from Colorado PUC was really concerned about this and asking for help at the conference. And it's also interesting, this came by request from one solar company, Oxen in San Jose, to investigate whether cells and modules from certain countries, Cambodia, Malaysia, are circumventing the tariffs. So yeah, that's a biggie, and I'm really making big waves right now.
Guillory, you got anything?
I'm just soaking it all up, honestly. I'm trying to be a sponge over here. A lot of this just goes way over my head. I'm in a completely different world. So
there was also some earnings reported in clearing up. I did not read them. Guillory, did you? Q1 earnings reports. Okay. Well, next time we'll get a debrief from you. I could have included that and you would have commentary on them. Maybe next time I'll think about it. I'm so sorry, Guillory. So sorry.
In the next 6 months, I'll take the time.
Notice SCE, Southern California Edison, said it's going to be seeking recovery of billions of dollars 2017 and 2018 wildfire and mudslide events. $8 billion. So that's been a back and forth thing. I remember the PUC turned down Edison for wildfire cost recovery back in 2017. We're in a completely different world now, AB 1054. And I wonder if you're someone that lost your house in a mudslide, will you end up with a charge on your bill to pay, to help the utility pay for it? But yeah, that's one little takeaway from SCE earnings.
Thank you, Jason. You get all the best coverage here, Ben.
The cost mount.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. That's all the news we're covering this week. The next episode will be recorded live at the Northwest Public Power Association's annual meeting in beautiful Coeur d'Alene, Idaho on May 24th. So if you're in attendance in Coeur d'Alene, stop by to say hello. To make sure you don't miss it or bonus episodes in the meantime, you can sign up for an unintrusive newsletter with links to all the ways to consume this fascinating content at publicpowerunderground.substack.com. Otherwise, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite podcast app. You can also find our merchandise on Shopify by searching for Public Power Underground and get that good swag.
Really wonderful job today, Ben. It was really nice to have you as a celebrity guest host. Do you feel the value and appreciate it? Did it feel good?
It feels great. It feels like it's a public benefit to talk about public power. It's a beautiful day for it.
It's great.
I love what you guys do. Big fan.
I really appreciated your takes on things. You're going to have to come back, I think, at some point. You may have to take over my role. Who knows?
No one wants that.
That's very true. Guillory, do you feel valued and appreciated? Is it good to be back?
I do. It's great to be back. Thanks, Paul.
Feels authentic to have you doing Arin Reports again. It will always be Arin Reports. Whoever reports because of your stardom.
I'd love to get the Arin Reports with the mug. I'd love to make add a little typing feature. How cool would that be? Customize Arin Reports. I bought one. I got all. I don't have all the merch, but I got all the. I bought one. Yeah, it's great. All good. Jason, do you feel valued and appreciated?
I do, Paul. I'd feel a little more valued if I was to get some free swag
Nope.
From Public Power Underground.
Nope. I did ask my mom what Public Power Underground merch she wanted for Mother's Day when I was talking to her on Mother's Day. So my mom is actually going to end up getting free Public Power Underground merch, but not you, Jason.
Hurts a
Not
little
you.
bit. I'm gonna.
Yeah, what was that? It was where's the merch? Period. Sent period.
Yep. That was it.
Gotta get some merch, and then I can file with you for cost recovery on that. Is that how that works, Paul?
Zing.
That could expense it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As always, send any news, questions, opinions, corrections, or complaints to Paul. Unless it was me, you can send that to me too. On Twitter @APowerManager, or if you're a friend of the Underground, you can send any of us a note. You don't have to be subscribed to News Data's weekly newsletters to get this podcast, but it sure makes the podcast make a lot more sense. That's all for this week. Thank you for tuning in.
We started in hard times to bring us all into the
Public Power Underground is a production of Klatskin IPUD and News Data. The views expressed here are our own and not the official views of Klatskin IPUD, News Data, or the organization of the guests also appearing on Public Power Underground. Public Power Underground is public power and public power adjacent news from a power department's perspective. It's written and directed by Klatskin IPUD's Power Department, led by me, Paul Dockery, and it's edited and published by the stellar team at Pioneer Utility Resources, led by associate producer Sarah Wooden. Our theme song, Roll On Enthusiast, was rewritten, performed and recorded by Arin Guillory, who is here today to really get the applause. Well done. That is a great theme song. I think it's remarkable work. It's played every week, and every time I'm like, yes. We don't always get it right, but we try. Thank you very much, Guillory. And Ian Bledsoe, who we got to get him back on at some point. And special thanks to our celebrity guest host, Ben, participating in this week's episode, and his friends at RMI for letting him do it. Thank you very much. You did a great job. I really appreciated you. Public Power Underground is for electric utility enthusiasts. Public Power Underground, very valued and appreciated.